Okay, we'll call the special council meeting for budget to order at 6 o'clock on January the 12th, or sorry, December the 1st, 2022. To administration, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? No, nothing from
Mr. Mayor,
administration,
members of
thank you.
council, administration has no additions or deletions.
Anything from council? Nothing from council. Look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Deputy Mayor Cosby, thank you. Any discussion? Call a question. All in order, or all in favor? No opposition, so that's carried. Item number 4 on our agenda, 4.1, flagged items for the 2023 budget. And head through to administration.
Awesome. So tonight's my last night being your host and MC, so I'll get us started tonight here. So we'll start off with our flagged items. I didn't carry forward the things from the November 21st meeting because we spoke about them all, so didn't carry them through. But they will be posted with the rest of the documents on the website. So we'll go into the flagged items from November 22nd. That should be big enough there. So I'm just going to skip over the first 7 items or whatever it is there. Those were just items that council directed us to adjust within the budget in preparation for bringing tonight. So I'll skip over those ones and we'll jump down to the electronic sign project, which Garnet has prepared a response for here.
Go ahead, sir.
Diane has my notes that I printed out, but I'll read it straight from here. We're currently seeking out options, and obviously it won't be a one-day process, and it'll be ongoing for the next little bit. But we are certainly looking.
Any questions through to Garnet on the electronic sign? Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the first thing is we got to find out if CN's going to allow us put it there, number one, and then go from there. Because we may be looking at, a B/C plan for B or C for placement.
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, members of council, as Mr. Olson said, that'll be part of what we do is, so there's really 2 parts of this, right?
Yeah.
Confirming a location, which was always going to be part of what we had to do if we got the funding. But we'll do this in conjunction now with finding funding and confirming a location. And the funding would be, whether it be some type of a grant that we can find, or corporate sponsorship, or community sponsorship in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to close off that item then, we've obviously removed it from the capital budget for this year. So if it does end up coming forward again, it'll come forward as an amendment to the capital budget next year. All right, so on to the franchise fee. Diane's prepared some information around this. I could pull it up on the screen if we like. If you want to scroll through it, Diane, up to you.
All the history is in the package. So I went back to when we first put the initial one in of the 5%, and then as it was presented in each budget. As it says in there, if council wants to change how it's allocated each year in the budget, we can do that. I've made it more clear in the RFD this year that it's partially offsetting the policing and the bencher, as well as some going to sewer liners. So they come, so it's a little bit clearer. So right now the 10% is still in the budget. So if you have any questions, I won't go through all the pages, it's all in there. So I'm happy to answer them.
Questions through to administration? Go ahead, Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Diane, how would this affect the budget or taxation or however it's paid? If we stated that, yes, we want 100% policing paid for it, and it out of its franchise fee, and then the remainder to go to the venture, or, have we got it set up?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, right now it doesn't, how it's distributed isn't going to affect the 4.53%, right? If you're going to pay 25% to the debenture, like, it's still the same amount of money you're spreading around, right?
Yeah.
The only difference would be if you wanted to keep it at 8% and not 10%. What was it again? It was like the
30,000, 31,000.
31,000.
1%.
But not all of that's affecting the taxation because 1% of the 2% is going into reserves, right? But how you divvy up and what you allocate it to doesn't make any difference on the bottom line. If it's fully funding policing and only funding a third of the debenture, or fully, funding,
I just-
right? It's to how you split it up. It doesn't affect the bottom line, but council can decide what they want to allocate it to. If it's more of a information piece for the public, what it's going to be used for.
Well, as long as the policing's paid for, and I thought that was the number one reason that we brought it up, was for the policing.
Yeah.
Because that way everybody would pay towards policing costs. But if it doesn't affect our taxes or our tax rate or anything, then,
How you split it
No.
up won't.
yeah, like I said, the money's coming in, it's being divvied up, the bills are paid.
Yeah.
Any other commentary regarding franchise fees? Does that answer council's questions then? Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll move on to the alternatives for the sand salt shed structure. Nawaz, I believe, has put together some information around this one.
So your worship and member of the council, I presented in the package the three options and with some brochures which we received. So if you guys want, I can go in more detail, but basically the cost which we budgeted at the business case we submitted, that's the cost to buy the material and do everything in-house. So we will buy the concrete blocks, we buy the material for the posts and put the roof, everything we buy in-house. All internal labor services, so we do not charge to any third-party contractor. And the same project, if we go with a third-party contractor, I would say it will cost around $30,000.
Yeah.
That's the minimum. And the other two options, you saw the pricing, and based on quick time around, so they just give us some rough numbers. Nobody give any exact number till they say, okay, we wanna see the layout, how far the Redwater is and everything, and then, so these are the rough numbers, but I think this was the option number one, is the best option at this point.
Any commentary through to Public Works, Nawaz, with respect to the sand salt shed? Not seeing any. I've always been a proponent of doing as much as we can in-house, for that simple reason that I know when I was involved in a different role with the municipality, it seemed like every time someone picked up the telephone, when I phoned them and I said, "This is the town of Redwater calling," you could almost hear the ka-ching going up on the invoice costs. So because you're a municipality, you were always looking at 15 to 20% more sort of things. So doing it in-house to me makes sense. So, no further comments on the sand salt shed? All right. Debenture payments, summary of debenture payments, please.
Jumping a little bit ahead on me there. So I'll go through these other ones, a couple quick ones here. Fire department, we were going to discuss and bring details on the operating contracts, etc. So just a note, we will bring that to 2023 Cal, whether it's December or January. Or no, December's canceled, so it'll be January.
December's still 2022.
Yep. For walking trails, I believe Nawaz is going to provide more of a deep dive on the estimated cost for remaining areas, and that's something that we're planning to bring to the council planning session for 2023 as well. So we'll see that one next year as well. For the rec agreement, some detail around the contract for capital funding, etc. So just to go further to what Garnet had mentioned at the last meeting is we're required to use it within 5-year period, but if we don't use it, we just have to provide an asset management plan outlining how the funds will be used. So up until 2025, which is the 5-year period, the agreement just stands as it is, and we just would have to provide them with an asset management plan at the end of that. that they would have to accept. Any other questions on that one?
Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
Not really a question, it's more like we need to start figuring out what we're going to do with this, or do we leave it till 2025 to figure it out? Right?
And that might be something that you discuss with the retreat, specifically around the asset management and funding
Yeah.
discussions.
Anything else? No, not seeing anything. We'll move on. The venture principal.
No, perfect. Took the words from my mouth. Diane's prepared that, so.
Yeah, so the schedule in there shows the payments and when they mature. Don't really have anything to add unless there's any questions.
That's because it was next on my agenda list.
Oh.
All right. Any
Oh, I see.
questions on the debentures?
Good to go from there?
I'm not saying, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
The small ones here, like the ones that are doing 25, we'll say, do we get a penalty if we pay off early?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Like even a year early,
Yeah, and
you know?
Yeah.
All right.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was 4 years ago that they brought in the big penalty whack on the debentures, because we were looking at it with the Water Commission. We were talking about the debenture there, and they had just recently redone the requirements for penalties on the debentures.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew that the answer was yes, we were.
yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I just know when we looked at paying back that amount from the amount we borrowed for the permanent project,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
it was pretty steep.
Yeah, it was pretty steep for that one.
Yeah, and that one was a really low interest. Yeah.
I was just thinking, you know, like if 2023 or 2024, we had a big surplus, sort of, you know, get out of the way type thing.
Yeah, it'll cost
know.
you more than
Yeah.
sitting on it.
They want their dollar.
Does anybody on council have any questions about any of the debentures that we have? What they're for, what they were originally obtained for, or anything like that? They're pretty straightforward.
Except for phase 3, it just says phase 3.
Yeah, Phase 3, number 46, Phase 3 was the main lobby, second story, golf lounge, cart storage area, that big chunk that was done. That was Phase 3. So, okay. Any questions on any of the flagged items through to administration? Not seeing any, okay. So 4.2, draft operating budget.
All right. So I'll get us started on this. Basically what I did is I put together a revised presentation that's got all of our updates for what we did from council feedback. So get us started here. So this is our revised updated numbers. Based on council's direction, we made the adjustments that were requested, which revised the operating revenues and expenses down and the municipal taxation down to 3.278 million, which was a $141,000 increase, 4.53% over 2022. So one thing I got to come clean on is when I was doing the utility rate items, this was back in August actually, believe it or not, I went through and we identified that garbage was actually going to be losing a significant amount of money due to an increase in the transfer fee payments that we were having to make now that they instituted their minimum charges. So what we had done way back then was forecasted increase to the fixed rate for garbage to drive up the revenue to bring it to that break-even number. 2-3 months later, when I was building a presentation, forgot all about it. I thought this was something we did in previous years. So my apologies on that one. Totally my mistake. to clear it up, I included this slide and the next slide. So what's actually included is the UCI upgrades that I spoke to, but the garbage rate, fixed rate increase is there as well for $1. Again, this purely was done to bring us to break even for garbage, and rather than touching the contract rates for the actual waste pickup and everything, I put it on the fixed fee instead because it has to do with Rose Ridge as opposed to the garbage pickup itself. So does anyone have any questions about that or concerns?
Go ahead, Councillor Olson.
This one's more towards Mr. Spicer. Our rates went up? Or fixed or changing the rates of tipping fees? Or is that
Well,
it?
so what it is we've got actual data now on how much it actually costs us for the minimum charges that they charge for now.
Never had data before because they couldn't track who was dumping garbage there, and we just paid a certain
Yeah.
rate of so much tonnage.
Oh.
We didn't pay anything.
This is for the transfer station.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The tonnage
Our
from
4
the
free trips
Yeah.
plus,
yeah.
right? What the 4 free trips are gonna cost.
Yeah.
And now we know approximately what they cost.
$4.95 a piece, isn't it, or something?
Yes. Depending on how many residents we have that use it, all this, we made some assumptions and we guesstimated low. So it was about $10,000 a year higher.
Okay.
So the $1 increase for the garbage gets us, I think it's just about 11,000 actually. So it
We
was,
didn't know
we didn't have actual numbers at that.
how many of our 2,200 residents were actually going to the transfer station. And how many
Use up
times a
their
year.
their 4
Yeah,
trips,
get their
right?
4
After that,
trips.
they're paying it on their own.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what it was for. Again, my apologies. I totally blanked on that when I was building the presentation. So, however, that will be offset by some good news, which was delivered to me by Councillor Olson. So, as I mentioned, the fixed rate for garbage is an increase from 7 to 8. If you saw in the original presentation, I actually had $8 in there because that's what I thought we had done last year. So I've corrected that in there as well. One thing to note, and I don't think I put it in this part of the presentation because it's just our flow-through cost, is Water Commission has reduced our rate by 12.5 cents per cubic meter that they charge through to us. So this results in a decrease for us charging through to the residents at that point on our variable. So I think when I did the math on an 18 cubic meter home, which would be an average home, it's about $1.75 per month that you save. So that'll offset some of the increases that we've proposed that we just recently found out will help out a little bit at that point then. Any questions before I move on to the next items?
Just going back to the transfer station costs and what have you. If I have visited Rose Ridge and I have gone over 1,000 kgs or whatever it is, 5,000 kgs at Rose Ridge, do I still have access to the 4 free trips here?
No.
Or they're added on top?
It's 500 kilograms in entirety for Rose Ridge, but at the actual station, like Rose Ridge's actual landfill, they have a scale there. So you're not a minimum 125, you could be.
Oh, I think it still is a minimum.
Oh, it is a minimum.
Yeah.
It is a minimum. They do charge a minimum there, but you can go above. They don't just
Yeah.
assume it's a minimum. Yeah, I forgot they did the minimum there too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had,
Once it's used, no matter which place you go to, it's used. It's just a Rose Ridge allowance, no matter which station you go to.
any
Okay.
other questions regarding utility rates?
Forgot to tell them gas fee.
What's that?
No gas increase. Riser fees.
Not true. So, again, I just summarized the post-deliberation budget changes that we made. So, from council's direction, we changed the common anniversaries to option 2, did our council COLA reduction, so that was about 0.66%. We've utilized the remainder of the tax mitigation reserve, so that was 1.16%. We removed FCM from the budget for 0.38%. We reduced our budget for our council retreat, which was 0.07%, and we removed the walking trail reserve transfer for 2023, and that saved us 0.26. So the total of all those reductions brought us down from the original presented 7.06% down to 4.53%. updated the increases graph to show you kind of where we shook out now with the change here. So as you can see, it's kind of leveled that big spike that we had down to a bit more of a normalized around 4.5%. Did a quick update on this one, so brought us back down to where we were last year, actually, funnily enough. So the monthly tax increase for the average ratepayer is actually $7 as opposed to $11 now with the changes that we made. And then I won't go through these, but I did include them just to show that we did make the adjustments in the divisions. I repasted the numbers. The one thing to note is that the expenses will look significantly different because I had actually deleted the amortization row to eliminate it from the presentation, but didn't take the total expense out of there. So that's why if you see a bit of a difference, the numbers are different, but when you look at the actual lines themselves, they'll all be the same with the exception of the couple changes in the wages and contributions, some training and other changes, and then some reclasses and moving things around. So again, no major changes, but just included for your information. These will be published with the documents that we put out to the public as well. And just to close off the final graph again, same thing that I presented before, but just with the updated numbers to show where the spend is from there. And close off with the summary again. Brought it back down to a 4.53% increase. Anybody have any questions or anything along those lines before I go to the presentation?
Anything? Not seeing any.
Okay. All right, so from there, we've sort of got an open agenda before we take any steps further. So I guess at this point, is there any other items, concerns, inquiries to discuss prior to moving into RFDs, if that's where we want to go to?
Council, anything? Go ahead, Councillor Williams.
I just have one question. When we're with the gym and the food bank, how do we account for what we are giving them? Like when we're paying for their utilities and the office space and stuff like that, how do we account for that?
We don't really have anything that we account for in regards to the in-kind space or anything like that, because we don't have really a rental rate for that area that they utilize, for the food bank specifically anyways. What we do account for is anything we pay on their behalf. So whether it's insurance or if we give them a grant for something, we've got that actually in our community granting. And then that'll be part of, I believe that's part of the document that we prepare for the budget as well.
I couldn't remember from last year how it was done, so. Okay.
Any other questions through to administration on the general budget? No? So that should take us through to 4.3 on the agenda. RFD, or utility rates, fees, and billings.
Awesome.
We're in your hands. Go ahead.
Okay, so we presented the utility rate changes within the budget. So the bylaw is attached with those changes, with the recommended increases to the utility capital investment charge for water, sewer, and gas, as well as the increase for the fixed rate for garbage to cover the tonnage at Roseridge from the transfer station. So the forecasted increase for the average residence was $4, because that's $1 on each charge, but $3 of that will be going into reserves for future sustainability. As Ryan mentioned, the water rate is reduced from 1.73 to 1.61. Average consumer, that would show a decrease of $2.25 a month. So my rough math on the spot, so it's a $1.75 increase. Check. So yeah, if there's any questions. Within the bylaw, there was some administrative changes too. Terminology of town manager to CAO, as well as expanding the acronym for the Capital Region Northeast Water Commission, so people knew what that was rather than the acronym. The final part was the errors or omissions. For councillors that were here before, this bylaw, probably 3 generations ago, was a policy, so we don't really need to cross-reference another bylaw within a bylaw, because this section is in the Utilities Bylaw 875, so we're just taking that out. So it's just some administrative tidying up, because you don't need to cross-reference it now, the fees are in a bylaw. So yeah, this would repeal the current utilities fees bylaw and come into effect on January 1st with these new rates that are in the budget. Are there any questions?
Councillor Spicer.
That bylaw 908 being a bylaw for the purpose of establishing utility rates, fees, and billings for the town of Redwater, and to repeal bylaw 901 be given first reading.
Discussion, council? Not seeing any, I'll call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Melnick?
I'll make a motion, move that bylaw 908 be given second reading.
All in favor? Councillor Williams?
I make the motion that council unanimously agree to give bylaw 908 third and final reading.
All in favor? Carried.
I'd like to make the motion that bylaw 908 be given third and final reading.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Last opportunity for discussion. Anything from council? Not seeing any. Question, all in favor? That will be carried. Uh, 4.4 gives us the Redwater Library Board grant for 2023. Okay, Ms. Paismani, go ahead.
This is included within the operating budget, but as it's a grant, we get a separate resolution. So within the budget, there's 74,836 for 2023. The library board did come and present to council. This is actually more than they did ask for. Within their budget, which is attached, they asked for 73,000. But historically, we do increase their grant the same as what we're using as inflation. So this is the same as what we're doing for COLA, so it's 4%. So it is more than they asked for, so I'm sure they'd be happy, but if there's any questions, let me know.
Councillor Melnick?
I'll make a motion, move that the town of Redwater provide the Redwater Library Board with an annual grant of $74,836 for 2023.
Thank you. Discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
I just want to make a comment. I appreciate the library. They're always very good with their dollars. Their pencils are sharp, and however comments you want to make about that, but we appreciate that. So it's nice to be able to give them a little extra beyond what, and it's not much. It's a little over $1,000, but it's something. Yeah.
And just to piggyback on that, there was commentary when the library board visited with respect to a reduction that they had recently received. When you look at the overall donation package, the year before there had been a spike and then there was a drop, so that was why there was a much larger percentage drop than was expected. But it would have been nice to still have seen that entity create more funds for the library, because the library certainly does provide those services that we depend on. So, right, Councillor.
I just want to make a comment on that as well. A lot of people come into town and they're using their box numbers, and if we gotta start tracking the physical addresses so that we can access some more of those funds.
Exactly.
And more library cards, because right now it's one per family and other libraries are issuing
One
each
per
kid.
person.
Yes.
And today I got a notification from the library that I have to renew my card. So they're even much better than Alberta registries. They don't tell you when your plate is going to expire, but we know when our library cards need to be replaced, so.
Whoever doesn't have a library card should go get one.
Yeah. So the motion on the floor, any further discussion? Call a question, all in favor? Carried. Okay. And I believe that was your motion, if I'm not mistaken, Councillor Melnick. Okay. Just have 1 second for a reset here. It appears that my fingers were faster than the computer. So anyway, so that was 4.4 for the library board grant. 4.5, Redwater Museum grant for 2023. Again, back to you, Ms. Wiseman.
Again, this is a grant for the museum. Included within the budget is 13,947, which covers their utilities, insurance, maintenance of the building, and a grant for tourism. Any questions?
Councillor Williams?
Make the motion that the town of Redwater provide the Redwater and District Museum with a grant of $13,947 for 2023.
Discussion? Not seeing any questions. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none, that's carried. Electrical franchise fee, 4.6. Please go ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about this quite a bit, so I won't go into too much in here. You know, as we know, the franchise fee is a more equitable way to get some funding across the taxation that we can't get from taxation, so from like the schools and the hospital. So it's another funding strategy that we can tap into. So the proposal that we've got in the budget is to increase from 8 to 10%. As we stated, 1% of that will be going into the sewer liner funding because with the grant funding depleting, and the balance is going to continue to fund the permanent place to venture as well as policing a portion of each.
Okay. Councillor Olson?
I'd like to make the motion that council approve the electrical franchise fee of 10% with Fortis for 2023.
Any discussion from council? Not seeing any, I'll call a question. All in favor? All right. Operating budget, 3-year operating plan, 4.7. Councillor Melnick.
Your Worship, I was just wondering, can we have a separate motion for the staff COLA? Because I have a pecuniary interest.
Certainly. We can look after that, no problem. I think administration, is that a difficulty for you?
No, I've got it prepared if we want to go that route, for sure.
All right. So we're in your hands to start with.
Awesome. Okay. So just to summarize again, I'm not going to go into heavy details because this is just a regurgitation basically of what I just presented to you. So as you all know, we're
1 second, please, Joe. Councillor Melnick?
Are we gonna do that
You
motion
can
first?
sit, you can sit until we get to that line item.
He's gonna leave the room.
Just leaves the room when they vote on the motion.
Oh,
for the
that's
COLA,
fine.
So you
Yeah,
can carry on presenting.
I'll get to the motions then.
Yeah.
So yeah, as mentioned, it's required by the MGA that we do our operating and 3-year financial plan. Obviously, we've got our increase of 4.53%. So for the average residential home at $197,500 assessment value, this results in approximately a $7 per month increase. I don't have a lot else for notes in that one there. I'll just maybe touch base on the communication plan side of things. So you guys have all seen our first draft of the budget document that we're planning to present. Obviously, requires some updates from the changes and everything, but we will continue to build this and expand on this, and that will be shared with the public once it's in its final form and ready to be dispersed. So there's a lot more communication side of things that we're hoping to get out into December here once we've got everything passed and approved. So I'll get into the motions then. So I guess we'll have to revise this here, do a new motion 1. And before Councillor Melnick leaves, the alternate motion that administration will propose is for motion 1 to be moved that COLA for staff is included in the 2023 operating budget at 4% and COLA for council included at 0%. Councillor Melnick, you can that one if you wish.
Councillor Spicer, you're declaring as well?
Yeah, you gotta declare it before you leave, so.
Okay, I'm declaring.
Can't walk out. So the motion would then be that, the first motion would then be that the staff COLA be implemented at 4%.
Here,
The
whoever
council,
wants to speak to it can read it.
Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Okay, move that COLA for staff is included in the 2023 operating budget of 4%, COLA for council at 0%.
Any discussion with respect to that? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposition? None? Carried.
They went too far, didn't they?
Well, they didn't go
Put out the
outside.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, really.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You might have, but Joe wasn't going outside. Go sit in your truck.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now I understand that we need to move.
Yep, so you can continue on with what's listed in your sheets as motion 1 and motion 2 from there. But they'll obviously be motion 2 and motion 3.
Okay. Motion number 2, anyone? Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move that the 2023 operating budget be approved as presented of a total revenue of $9,174,737, of total expenses of $9,174,737, including operating transfers to reserves of $449,843, municipal taxation of $3,183,342, and amortization expense of $1,355,864.
Thank you. Discussion? It's big numbers.
I
And,
got my account.
and I think the important thing at this point in time is to recognize that those numbers could have been a whole lot bigger without the effort that staff put into this. I don't know, I don't think this is a secret or anything else, but I believe we started off in the 19% range. And with a 7% inflation rate, the numbers could have been very, very large. So congratulations to the staff, management team, and administration for making sure that you did the best you possibly could for us, and it's appreciated, so.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one comment?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, on behalf of administration, I think there's two people who really need to be mentioned in that equation. Obviously, it's a team effort, but the lead on this project on an annual basis is our finance people, Ms. Pizzemi and Mr. Munch. And without their efforts, and at times, quite frankly, heroic efforts, I know at times we put them under the gun with, pushing deadlines, not just to the limit, but over the limit. And the work that they do on this certainly doesn't go unnoticed by administration, and I'm happy to see that it doesn't go unnoticed by council as well. So thank you very much.
And not to gush too much, but Ryan did lead the budget this year, so I want to give him a big kudos, because I handed the torch over a little bit and he did a fantastic job, so.
Well, like I said, thank you to both of you. Finances, I more money than my bank account, just like Councillor Olson. So, question for motion number 2. All in favor? Any opposition? Carried. Okay. Motion number 3. Deputy Mayor Cosby.
Move that the 2023 three-year operating plan be approved as presented.
Discussion from council? Again, the key word to this is it's a plan, it's not a budget. But again, it takes an awful lot of work to put it together, and I know you had support from the other managers, but it's still an awful lot of responsibility and work, so thank you again. Call a question, all in favor? That's carried. Okay.
Awesome.
4.8, capital budget and 5-year capital plan.
So I just noticed on your guys' agenda packages, it doesn't look like you have a copy of this RFD in your agenda package, so I'm gonna make this as big as I can
That's fine.
for us here. So, same type of thing as our operating, just to close us off here for the year. So obviously we made our adjustments in the 2023 capital budget, which brought us down to a total of $1,454,547, funded by grants, reserves, our operating transfer to capital. Partnerships and other was the minor hockey and CFEP items, and then our repurposing of the debenture at $240,000. So, as always, MJA requirement to provide our capital budget and now our 5-year capital plan as well. So, won't go into any more detail on that one. Everything there.
Councillor Spicer.
I move that the 2023 capital budget for a total of $1,454,547 be accepted and funded as presented.
Discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Councillor Melnick?
I'll make a motion that we move that 2023 5-year capital plan be approved as presented.
Any discussion from council? Not seeing any, call a question. All in favor? And that's carried.
Motion to adjourn, or you get something else to say?
That's everything that we've got from administration, so we thank you for the excellent budget deliberations and the opportunity to present everything to you and get everything passed ahead of the council meeting. Now I don't come here on Tuesday, so I'm very happy.
If we would have known.
Ken, we'll come up with something, okay?
Not getting off that.
I got time to talk.
Again, just to make mention of the fact that I know this has been 3 nights, but council, thank you also for putting your attention to the budget. Nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to deal with it, nobody wants to see the outcome without it or with it or anything else. But I can honestly tell you that it's probably the most brain ache that I experience on council, sitting there and trying to dissect the numbers and trying to figure out how it all puts together. So thank you, council, for paying attention to it, and thank you, administration, for supporting us.
Thank you very much.
And we are adjourned.